Welcome to Last Dawn Stories channel. I transmigrated into the daughter of a vicious villain. To change the tragic fate of our father-daughter pair, this little old me chose to torment my obsessive-compulsive dad to death. At age 2, I turned every item in the house upside down, successfully making him stand up other villains. At age 4, I dismantled dad's treasured figurines, causing him to miss the male and female leads engagement banquet and successfully avoiding a bloodbath. At the age of 7, I kept interrupting my dad's show-off during the dinner where the heir was being decided, which ended up making the male lead deeply grateful to him. Later, I somehow became the major shareholder of the Thomas family, and they demanded I return to my roots. The villainous dad was furious. "Simon Thomas, are you never going to stop? I can let everything else slide, but my daughter is absolutely off limits." The original villain was an illegitimate child abandoned since birth. Ruthless and utterly devoid of conscience, stopping at nothing to achieve his goals. As the male lead's younger brother, he would employ every dirty trick to steal the female lead, fight for the family fortune, and torment them to the brink of death. Unlike the male lead's central air conditioning personality, he was selfish and brooding, choosing to equally trample over everyone in his path. In the end, he was abandoned by all, destitute and alone, crushed by a truck into a QR code. This is his retribution. However, before the plot began, I was born. Can you believe it? A cold-blooded, ruthless, and expressionless villain who wouldn't bat an eye even after losing hundreds of millions suddenly turned into a kind and doting dad overnight. Is this what they mean by, every action has its consequences? Could it be that his retribution is actually me? Ethan Thomas stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, holding a glass of whiskey in his left hand while gently touching his forehead with his right. The mahogany-colored liquor reflected his unfathomable eyes, adding a touch of chill to his already cold and handsome demeanor. Despite having just graduated from university, he carried little of the youthful naivety one might expect, instead exuding a world-weary sense of maturity. Watching this scene, my eyes instantly turned into little heart shapes. Is this my father in this lifetime? So handsome. Does he know how many women would be captivated by his profound demeanor? I wobbled towards Dad, but in a moment of carelessness, my left foot tripped over my right, and I fell flat on my face with a thud. Fortunately, Dad had the foresight to lay thick foam mats on the floor at home and cover the sharp edges of the furniture with sponge, preventing a potential tragedy. Seeing me fall, Dad's eyes darkened. He immediately set the wine glass on the coffee table, strode over to me, and lifted me up in one swift motion. "Sweetheart, weren't you asleep? Why did you follow me here?" Dad's face was filled with helplessness. "I just wanted some alone time. Do 2-year-old usually cling this much?" I spread my arms open. "Daddy, hug." Daddy gently picked me up in his arms, wanting to nuzzle his head against my cheek. But as soon as he got close, a pungent smell of alcohol hit me, making me wrinkle my nose in distaste. I turned my head away abruptly, wriggling my body like a slippery snake. "Daddy, stinky, don't want Daddy." Flustered, Dad placed me on the sofa and immediately turned to enter the bedroom. Listening to the sound of running water from the bedroom, I quietly climbed down from the sofa and began surveying my territory. To be honest, even though Dad is a villain, he's really rich, having lived 2 lifetimes. This is the first time I've lived in a several hundred square meter luxury apartment. Struggling to move to the floor-to-ceiling window, I'm mesmerized by the bustling night view outside. In my past life as a workhorse, when did I ever have the chance to be this leisurely? After admiring the night view outside the window, the liquor bottle on the coffee table caught my attention, a bottle of Macallan 30-year-old worth $38,000. I instantly perked up. The lingering scent of alcohol in the air suddenly seemed sweeter. As a wild boar, when have I ever tasted such fine grains? Just a little sip, it should be fine, right? I deliberately or unintentionally forgot my identity as a 2-year-old toddler, dipped my finger into the wine glass, and licked a taste. A wave of exhilarating sensation shot straight to my soul. This wine is really, really delicious. After holding it in for a long time, I shed tears of uncultured joy. Why is the wine glass tilted? Hey, why is the coffee table tilted too? Why is the world starting to spin too? At that moment, a desperate, sharp scream from Dad came through the doorway. "Sweetheart, have you been drinking?" I turned back and gave Dad a sweet smile, then collapsed headfirst to the ground. Only a desperate Dad remained. In my dazed state, I saw a barrage of comments appear in the air. "Ha ha ha ha, what an adorable daughter. Come here, let Auntie give you a kiss." So the gloomy villain is actually this gentle and loving in private. Sigh. This is probably the last bit of gentleness he has left. After his daughter dies, he'll completely turn to the dark side and embark on a path of no return. What the hell, just 2 years of good life, and now I'm about to kick the bucket. Tomorrow, the villain is going to snipe the protagonist's company, but unfortunately, the protagonist is already prepared. The villain will be trapped for a whole week, and by the time he gets home, his daughter will have already starved to death. No wonder the villain is so fixated on the protagonist. There's actually this layer of reason behind it. He got what he deserved, if you ask me. Who told him to go against our male lead? Watching the barrage of comments flooding the screen, I was utterly dumbfounded. No way, he actually starved to death. I snapped awake instantly. How can you be a parent, letting such a young child drink alcohol? Just waking up, I saw Dad being scolded by the doctor as if he were a grandson. Dad kept nodding with a cold face, making the scene look utterly ridiculous. I couldn't hold back and burst out laughing. Sweetheart, you're awake. Don't ever scare Daddy like that again, understand? Seeing me wake up, a tender smile appeared on my father's stern face. Remembering my fate, I squeezed out a few tears and whimpered to him, I know, I was wrong. Daddy, will you stay with me tomorrow, please? Dad's face showed a hint of hesitation. Sweetie, Daddy has something urgent to take care of tomorrow morning and needs to go out for an hour. Be a good girl and wait for me at home. I'll be back soon. I tugged at his pant leg, pouting pitifully while acting spoiled. Daddy, don't go, stay home with me. I don't want, Daddy, to go out. A hint of hesitation flashed in Dad's eyes. Then he said firmly, no, this matter is very important to me. No matter how much I wheedled after that, Dad wouldn't budge. Dad was dead set on making trouble for the protagonist. He probably never expected to get trapped himself. I have no idea which nerve in his brain went wrong. A domineering CEO who refuses to hire a nanny, doesn't get married, and raises me all by himself. Otherwise, I wouldn't have starved to death. After returning home, I lay in the crib, pondering what to do next. Suddenly, an idea struck me. Dad is perfect in every way. Except for one flaw, OCD, and the kind that's beyond cure. If only I could. Thinking of this, I took a closer look at Dad. He was already asleep, his breathing steady and strong, and he probably wouldn't wake up anytime soon. I tiptoed out of the crib. It wasn't until dawn the next day that I yawned and crawled back into bed. Not long after, Dad woke up. He walked to my bedside, looked at me sleeping soundly, and said softly, Sweetheart, Daddy will be back soon. Be good, okay? He kissed my forehead and turned to leave. Rolling over, I tightly covered my mouth. Just thinking about what's about to happen makes me afraid I won't be able to hold back my laughter. Dad's footsteps gradually changed from light to heavy, and I heard the sound of other doors opening. Dad must have noticed by now. Upside-down wine glasses, dolls, decorations, that's right, except for things that were too heavy. I turned everything in the house upside down. What a mischievous daughter. Isn't this going to drive her old father crazy? She didn't see the mix of conflict and pain on his face, like a palette. It's hilarious. What kind of expression is that? I curiously opened my eyes, just in time to meet Dad's face. Those dark eyes were filled with 3 parts conflict, 3 parts pain, and 4 parts disbelief. I've had professional training. No matter how funny it is, I won't laugh, unless I can't help it. Ha 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 ha. So there really are faces that can resemble a color palette. What an eye-opener. I laughed so hard I was gasping for breath, until, crack asterisk, oops, my jaw dislocated. When Dad took me to the hospital again, he seemed to have aged 10 years. The doctor said in surprise, Why is it you again? Dad tightly grasped the doctor's hand and pulled out a checkbook from his pocket. Doctor, save my daughter. She's only 2 years old. She can't just become mute like this. Name your price. I'm willing to pay any amount. The doctor looked at him as if he were an idiot. She just has a dislocation. It's not like she lost her tongue. Also, $87.62. Are you paying cash or using insurance? Dad awkwardly took back that checkbook. Back home, Dad held me carefully, covering my mouth every time I tried to open it. Got it. Once bitten, twice shy. Just as I hesitated whether to bite him, his phone rang. Holding me with one hand, he answered the call with the other. Ethan Thomas. Are you messing with us? Where the hell are you? Dad looked at me with teary eyes, then glanced at the upside-down items around, and closed his eyes in pain. He took a deep breath and said solemnly, My daughter can't be without me. I need to take care of her. Also, I have housework to do, let's make plans next time when I'm free." The person on the other end of the phone was stunned, and after a long pause, finally exclaimed, "Is that all? Come over quickly. I'll hire you a top-tier maternity nurse." Dad frowned and said coldly, "For me, this is a big deal. Simon Thomas has already been driven into a corner. Whether I'm there or not makes no difference. I believe with your capabilities, dealing with him won't be a problem." On the other end of the phone, "We're not you, so there's no need to trust us this much." Before the words were even finished, Dad coldly hung up the phone. He placed me in the car seat and stuffed a pacifier into my mouth. I sucked on it listlessly a couple of times, and only then did Dad feel satisfied enough to start working. After tidying up the house, Dad sat on the sofa and let out a long sigh of relief. As if remembering something, Dad sneakily glanced at me and pulled out his phone to start searching. I tilted my head to see the search results and instantly felt unhappy. Hey, I'm trying to save us here. Talk about biting the hand that feeds you. What should I do if my daughter has ADHD? Symptoms and treatment methods for ADHD. Which hospital is the most authoritative in treating ADHD? Ha 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 ha, laughing my way to riches. Top-tier father-daughter mutual sabotage. This little one is breaking his heart for his old man. Humph, if Dad hadn't taken me in, I wouldn't even bother with him. My birth was an accident. My biological mother had a crush on the protagonist Simon Thomas. But Simon Thomas only saw her as a younger sister. To get him, my biological mother secretly drugged him, unexpectedly. It was my father, Ethan Thomas, who fell victim. They looked so alike that my mother, in her infatuation, failed to tell them apart. 10 months later, when she brought me to the Thomas family, Simon Thomas presented proof that he wasn't there that day, so the truth came out. At that time, I had just transmigrated and hadn't even been a month old when my birth mother abandoned me at my father's doorstep, overwhelmed with shame. My birth mother resolutely chose to go abroad. In her eyes, I was probably just a disgrace she never wanted to see again. The moment Dad opened the door, I saw his eyes. At that instant, I thought, it's over. Those were cold, merciless eyes. He didn't look like someone who would take me in. Do I really have to restart like this? I was too young, and before I could think much longer, drowsiness washed over me like a tide. When I opened my eyes again, I was already lying on my father's bed. "You're awake." Unexpectedly, his voice was very gentle. I wanted to respond to him, but the words that came out were, "Wah, wah." This body's self-control was too poor. I shamefully burst into tears. Dad flusteredly picked me up and paced around the room, trying to soothe me. Strangely enough, the moment I was in Dad's arms, I stopped crying immediately. He, watching me grin widely. Dad's gaze and expression grew even softer. The way he looked at me was filled with nostalgia, as if he was seeing his past self through me. That night, Dad held me on the sofa reminiscing about the past, and I slept unusually soundly. There was just one problem. Although my soul is that of an adult, this body isn't. At this age when even pee and poop can't be contained, what happened next goes without saying. I peed all over Dad while sound asleep. To avoid disturbing my sleep, Dad sat through the night in his soaked clothes. It wasn't until noon the next day that he finally changed into fresh ones. I initially thought this was completely normal, but later I discovered Dad has OCD, and obsessive-compulsive disorder often comes with mysophobia, yet Dad never showed any signs of it. Every time I peed on him, he would even laugh and praise me. "Such a big pee volume means you must have a strong bladder. You'll surely grow up to have a healthy body." I was so embarrassed that I covered my face with my feet. The villain thought, "Look at my mouth. So good at complimenting people. Great job with the compliments. But please don't do it again. My toes are curling so hard they could dig out a courtyard house." Dad rejected the suggestion of hiring a nanny and insisted on taking care of me himself. He had no idea where he learned his parenting skills: feeding, changing diapers, lulling to sleep. Every task was done effortlessly in one go. Dad never let me suffer. He raised me very well. Even the doctors had tactfully remarked, "Children at this age don't necessarily benefit from more nutrition." Dad nodded coldly, then walked further and further down the path of raising me plump and fair without looking back. Although Dad is a villain, he truly gives me his all, so I secretly whispered to myself, I must protect the best dad in the world. Although Dad didn't go to snipe Simon Thomas, I learned the follow-up from the chaotic barrage of comments. It's true that Simon Thomas's company had business issues, and it's also true that there was a trap. Dad contacted a whole bunch of villains, but at the critical moment, he himself went missing. P.S. At that time, Dad was at home, gritting his teeth while arranging various objects. When the moment came, the villain had no choice but to brace himself and face it head-on. Originally, according to the plot, under Dad's leadership, they could still hold their own against Simon Thomas, but with Dad absent, they were instantly crushed by Simon Thomas this time. As a result, Simon Thomas's company not only avoided losses but also made a substantial profit. Moved, he called his father. "Ethan, I knew you cared about me, otherwise, you wouldn't have gone out of your way to gather all my enemies in one place. After all, brothers shouldn't hold grudges overnight." Dad didn't say a word, but I saw his face turn livid, veins instantly bulging on his forehead. I don't know why, but the usually decisive and cold-faced king of hell in the business world turns into a hot-tempered child every time he meets his brother. I was amused by Dad's antics and giggled beside him. "Daddy, you're so funny, my niece can talk now. Just wait, I'm coming over right away." Dad coldly spat out a few words through gritted teeth. "Get lost, don't come." Unfortunately, the protagonist had already hung up the phone and was eagerly rushing to my house. Not long after, knocking sounds came from my door. Dad carried me back to the bedroom with a cold expression, lying on the bed without saying a word, but the knocking at the door never stopped. "Ethan, open the door," I asked the security guard. "You didn't go out today." Dad didn't even lift an eyelid, unable to get the door open. Simon Thomas switched to a plaintive tone. "Ethan, don't hide inside and stay silent. I know you're home. You had the guts to secretly have a child behind my back. Why don't you have the guts to open the door? Open up." Simon Thomas's voice was so loud that the CEO Lee upstairs sent a message to Dad. "Did you abandon someone after leading them on, and now they're at your door, and the protagonist is a man?" Dad silently threw the phone into the trash can, then carried me and opened the door. The man standing at the door had a face almost identical to Dad's. But unlike Dad's aloof demeanor, the man before us had sunnier, gentler features, like a spoiled big boy. "You've seen enough, now go back." Dad shielded me behind him, his face expressionless. Simon Thomas ignored Dad's cold words, instead stepping around him to look at me with interest. "Hello, little niece, I'm your uncle." Is this the protagonist who arranged for the truck to crush Dad into a QR code? Fortunately, in this life they hadn't developed any grudges yet. I immediately stumbled over to Simon Thomas and called out, "Uncle," in a clear, childish voice. Simon Thomas's eyes instantly lit up. He signaled his secretary to take a document from the bag and then handed it to me. "You're such a good niece. Consider this castle as your uncle's gift to you." The castle in the picture is magnificent, exactly like the castle of my dreams. My eyes instantly turned into little stars. "Uncle, uncle," I clung to Simon Thomas's leg, crying out with genuine emotion. And soon my hands were filled with all sorts of treasures: yacht keys, VIP black cards, island property deeds. Dad, with a cold expression, tried to return these to Simon Thomas, but I held on tightly, unwilling to let go. Dad had no choice but to let it be. "By the way, have you chosen a name for your little niece? Just don't make it like yours." "Sorry." Realizing his mistake, Simon Thomas apologized sincerely. His father was an illegitimate child and didn't have a name until he was 12. "Happy Simon, may heaven bless this child with a lifetime of happiness." Dad wasn't angry. Instead, he solemnly uttered this name. "Happy, good name, Ethan. I didn't realize you were quite cultured. I'll leave the naming of my future child to you." Simon Thomas patted Dad on the shoulder and then stood up to take his leave. After he left, Dad clenched his fists. "Happy, these, Daddy will have them too someday. When that time comes, Daddy will buy you new ones." Seeing me unable to put down the gifts from Simon Thomas, Daddy's tone lacked confidence. As an illegitimate child who had been driven out of the family to make his own way, he was far from being as wealthy as the Thomas family. I then struggled to pick up that pile of gifts and place them into Daddy's arms. "Daddy, these are for you. Exchange for money, make big money." My language skills weren't fully developed yet, but Daddy instantly understood what I meant. He placed me on his lap, his eyes actually glistening with tears. I secretly gloated to myself. Wrapping Daddy around my little finger was as easy as pie. Wow, the gloomy villain instantly turned into an injured puppy. This Happy is so skilled. When I was 2, I could only babble. Why does she seem a bit off? Could she be a transmigrator? I playfully nodded at the void. The barrage exploded instantly. No wonder. I was wondering why it's so mean-worthy. In the blink of an eye, 2 years passed. Dad's business grew bigger and bigger thanks to the gifts I gave him. making him even wealthier than in the original plot. We moved from a large flat to a grand villa. After moving into the villa, for some inexplicable reason, Dad set his sights on Simon Thomas again. For the safety of both Dad and myself, I managed to get through these years by acting cute and exploiting Dad's obsessive-compulsive tendencies. As a result, Dad came to a conclusion: I'm too idle, so he hired 10 tutors for me. This way, from morning till night, I wouldn't have time to bother him. Finally, when the weekend came, I thought I could finally catch a break, but Dad smiled and pulled a wrench out of the drawer. What was he going to do? I stared at him with wide eyes as he said earnestly, "Happy. When I was your age, I could already dismantle scrap to earn money. It's time for you to follow in your father's footsteps." Ha ha ha. So the villain, having been drenched in rain during his own childhood, now wants to tear his daughter's umbrella too. Looking into Dad's hopeful eyes, I swallowed the words of refusal in my throat. Fine, I'll just do it to make him happy. These days, being a little dad isn't easy at all. Every single one of them is a handful, under Dad's guidance. My hands-on skills and productivity improved by leaps and bounds. Dad was very pleased, then took out a little pink pistol from the drawer and handed it to me. "This is Dad's birthday gift for you. Pink is cute too, you know." I rolled my eyes. I'm not a little boy. How could I possibly like toy guns? Dad didn't notice my expression and continued pulling a cardboard box from the drawer. Dad poured out a few bullets. I was stunned. These were actually real. Where did Dad get this from? This is illegal. But you know what? Ever since I found out it was real, this little pink handgun has grown on me more and more. Dad's business keeps expanding, and his methods aren't exactly legitimate. Who knows how many people he's pissed off. When promising to take me to the shooting range over the weekend, Dad cautiously asked me, "Happy, would you like to have a mom?" Oh no, Dad's about to be snatched away by some wild woman outside. Hearing this, my internal alarm bells instantly went off. Under my tight surveillance, when did Dad manage to connect with his white moonlight? Wait, no, it can't be called connecting. After all, the female lead only has eyes for the male lead. At most, it's just Dad's unrequited love. I glanced at my dad, whose grin stretched from ear to ear, and shook my head, hopelessly lovesick. It's a cliched story. Dad's father got drunk and had a one-night stand with a bar hostess. The hostess wanted to climb the social ladder, so she secretly gave birth to Dad. But the Thomas family didn't want this child, because they already had Simon Thomas. After extorting a large sum of money, Dad's mother abandoned him at an orphanage and vanished into the vast sea of humanity. Dad inherited the Thomas family's looks and was as delicate as a doll since childhood. But in the orphanage, this was far from a good thing. Every couple who came to adopt a child was drawn to Dad, leaving no attention for anyone else. This also set the stage for Dad being beaten. For years of bullying, there was always a girl standing in front of him. She was brave and fearless. I won't let them bully him. Perhaps it was from this moment that Dad fell in love with the female lead. Later, Dad was taken back by the Thomas family, and the female lead was also adopted by a couple of doctors. Since then, the two lost contact. It wasn't until recently that he discovered Simon Thomas's fiancée was that very girl from back then. I carefully considered my words and said, "Dad, is there a possibility that she did this not because she likes you, but because she's a kind person?" Dad got anxious. "That's impossible. Otherwise, why would she take the beating for me instead of someone else?" Hearing such love-struck nonsense, I was utterly speechless. "Then why didn't she marry you but chose to marry Uncle instead?" "Silly Dad, she only sees you as a little brother. She and the male lead are the real destined pair." A glint of coldness flashed in Dad's eyes. "It was all the Thomas family forcing her, but it's fine, I'll step in." Looking at my dad exuding an overwhelming aura, I was filled with curiosity, curious about what exactly he would do. As long as I appear before her, she will definitely come with me. Watching my dad's confident demeanor, I gave his face a firm rub. "Hey Dad, why is your face so big?" "Oh no, the villain is about to crash the protagonist's engagement party, but he'll just end up as a clown, with his dignity trampled underfoot." I don't need the subtitles to tell me what happens next. It's nothing more than lashing out in shame and turning love into hatred. To prevent Dad from doing something stupid, I decided to find a reason to make him give up his plan. But this time, Dad was unusually determined, and no amount of my coaxing worked. As the day of the male and female lead's engagement party drew closer, Dad, like a peacock spreading its feathers, busied himself with grooming and dressing up all day. "This won't do. For the sake of our future happiness as father and daughter, I cast my wicked gaze upon Dad's collection room. By the spirits of the figurines, please forgive me, this is what you call filial piety. They say daughters are their father's little cotton-padded jackets, but this one is black-hearted and full of holes. Ignoring the teasing comments in the bullet chat, I timed my dad's departure perfectly and sneaked into the collection room. The walls were adorned with a dazzling array of meticulously preserved figurines. These were all the treasures my dad had collected over the years. Dad was practically half an orphan, although the Thomas family later took him back out of shame. But apart from tuition fees, all other expenses were earned by Dad through work-study programs. He naturally couldn't bear to spend money on figurines, yet for a boy, those dazzling and cool figurines undoubtedly held immense appeal. So when Dad became successful, the first thing he did was treat his childhood self to a feast. As he grew wealthier, the scale of his collection also expanded. As the saying goes, raise figurines for 1,000 days, use them in a single moment, spend money to avoid disaster. Today's the day. Rubbing my hands together, I pulled out the wrench my dad passed down to me. When Dad came in, he was greeted by parts scattered all over the floor. Well, that's not entirely accurate. One figurine was actually assembled by me, but the more I looked at it, the weirder it seemed. Luffy wielding Thor's hammer while wearing Iron Man's armor. The moment Dad saw this, his face visibly turned red with anger. He gasped, almost choking on his breath. Happy, you, this, sigh. Dad wanted to say something but remained silent, only letting out a sigh. I obediently looked at Dad and said considerately, Dad, don't you have something to do? You should go ahead. I'll handle things here. Dad's expression softened slightly, but when he saw what I did next, it immediately tensed up again, because I had just connected Conan's upper body to Spider-Man's lower body right in front of him. Dad's lips kept twitching slightly, clearly reaching the limit of his patience. Dad, if you don't leave now, you'll be late. As I spoke, I casually dismantled a few more of his favorite figurines. This time, Dad couldn't hold back anymore and gently took the wrench from my hand. Happy, you did a great job assembling, but please don't do it again next time. Then, Dad personally taught me how to restore them. One wall of a tycoon's collection equals 3 apartments in Shanghai. Happy is about to get a beating this time. I imitated Dad's demeanor and gave a cold smile. So what if it's just a beating? It's no big deal. The young lady, dare to take responsibility for what I've done. I handed a clothes hanger to Dad, who looked at me suspiciously. After a long while, he suddenly understood. Thank you, my precious daughter. He casually took the hanger and hung up his expensive suit. Then he continued with his teaching work. By the time he finished, it was already late at night. Satisfied, he admired his collection and couldn't help but give himself a thumbs up. Suddenly, he realized the severity of the problem. With a bitter expression, he asked me, Happy, tell Daddy, what time is it now? A glimmer of hope flickered in his eyes, but I heartlessly shattered him. Dad, it's already past midnight. Dad crouched on the ground, clutching his head in pain. I stood beside him, gently patting his head to comfort him. Daddy, be good, don't cry. Too early to wake up. What am I seeing? A 4-year-old mature girl comforting a 26-year-old childish domineering CEO. Daddy's expression grew even more distressed. Unfortunately, misfortunes never come singly, and bad luck loves to toy with the unfortunate. Dad's phone rang. It was Simon Thomas calling. Before Dad could speak, he excitedly said, Ethan, thank you for the cake and the ring. I completely forgot how much Mia values ceremonial gestures. Luckily, you were there. You're truly the best brother I could ask for. Hardened. I saw Dad's fist clench. From the schadenfreude-filled barrage of comments, I pieced together what actually happened on the engagement night. Dad wasn't as brainless as he claimed. On the contrary, he had meticulously prepared a 7-tier cake and 9,999 roses. In the midst of the roses, there lay a box. Inside was an enormous diamond ring. He would make a dazzling appearance when the Thomas family announced the engagement, pouring his heart out to the heroine in a heartfelt confession. Everything was planned to perfection, but he didn't go. Thus, the scene that night became, before the Thomas family could announce the engagement, there was a knock at the door. Hello, this is a gift from Mr. Simon Thomas to Miss Mia. Then, the cake, roses, and diamond ring appeared before the female lead all at once. Her eyes instantly welled up with tears as she threw herself into Simon Thomas's arms, wiping her eyes. I thought you'd never come around, you blockhead. So you were secretly preparing a surprise for me all along. Simon Thomas awkwardly rubbed the back of his head, smiling in an extremely unnatural manner. Ha 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 ha. I was laughing so hard I rolled on the floor, tears streaming down my face. Seeing me lose it, Dad couldn't even dwell on his lost love anymore. He called the doctor. Dr. Jack, I think my daughter might have some issues with her brain. Ignoring my protests, Dad carried me under his arm to the hospital. After a series of professional examinations with various precision instruments, the doctor reached a conclusion. He adjusted his glasses and said seriously, Mr. Thomas, in my opinion, your daughter must be naturally cheerful. I'm seriously doubting whether this doctor bought his qualifications with money, but Dad thanked the doctor profusely and took me home, happy. I've been neglecting you lately. It won't happen again. On the way, Dad felt extremely guilty. Clearly attributing my unusual behavior to himself, a twinge of guilt also surfaced in my heart, and I silently made a resolution. As long as you stop courting death, Dad, I won't torment you anymore. This time, Dad behaved very well and remained well behaved for a full 3 years. But how could a villain not court death? Soon enough, he made a dazzling entrance with his brand new revenge plan. In Father's view, the roots of his lifelong misfortune lay first with the Thomas family, and second with Simon Thomas, and to some extent, these two were one and the same. Toppling the Thomas family is equivalent to toppling Simon Thomas. Dad turned the shareholders of the Thomas family conglomerate against them, planning to strike directly at the dinner where the successor would be finalized. When I learned about Dad's plan, I was utterly shocked. We were living just fine. Why provoke the protagonist? He has the protagonist's halo. He can turn calamities into blessings, don't you know? Although after my modifications, Dad's strength now far exceeds the original plot, but I still don't have high hopes for Dad. It's just that this time Dad is dead set on revenge, and nothing I say will change his mind. To prevent me from causing trouble, he locked the collection room and flushed the key down the toilet. He even went so far as to glue all the household items together with super glue. By then, I was already 7 years old, a well-behaved girl, playing the mindless, spoiled act was outdated by then, so I stopped making trouble and just begged Dad to take me along. At first, Dad didn't agree, but later he relented. The Thomas family owes us. Dad will take you to get it back. A confident smile appeared on Dad's face, his lips quirking as if he could already see the moment of success. I was so scared that I slapped my dad. Instead of being a cool and aloof villain, why act like some crooked-mouthed dragon king on the day of the banquet? The Thomas family estate was packed with people. The moment my dad and I made our entrance, we drew everyone's attention. Is this the illegitimate son of the Thomas family and his illegitimate daughter? Like father, like daughter. I bet it won't be long before he's holding a grandchild. Dad covered my ears, his gaze so fierce it seemed like he wanted to kill someone. Unlike the unfriendly guests, Simon Thomas, the heir, was very friendly. He personally handed his father a glass of champagne and said sincerely, Ethan, welcome home. His father sneered, pushed the glass away, and gave the traitors a meaningful look. I don't agree with Simon Thomas as the heir. I also disagree. +1, the moles all came out of the woodwork. Dad had quietly acquired 30% of the Thomas family's shares, and with these shareholders' support, victory was within grasp. Dad spoke with great satisfaction. Simon Thomas, let me tell you. Before Dad could finish, I pitifully said, Dad, I lost a button. The neatly arranged double-breasted buttons suddenly lost their harmony. A conflicted expression appeared on Dad's face. Ethan, you, don't speak. I have something to do. Dad skillfully took out a sewing kit from his pocket and then, with even greater expertise, began mending for me. After finally finishing the sewing, Dad confidently said, Simon Thomas, let me tell you, Dad, the braid on my left side came loose. Dad, there's something dirty on your right leather shoe. Dad was too exhausted to deal with it and simply had no time to talk to Simon Thomas. Seeing the timing was about right, I said to Dad, Dad, do you remember if we locked the door when we left home today? Dad froze instantly, like a stone statue. Seizing the moment, I pressed on. Dad, I've always had a question. When you walk, do you step with your left foot first or your right foot? Dad's eyes were filled with confusion. Left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. Dad started walking in place, and ended up limping outright. By the time Dad finally figured it out, Simon Thomas had already dealt with the traitors. Holding on to his dizzy and disoriented father, he was moved to tears. Ethan, it must have been exhausting to uncover these traitors. You've suffered. And you truly are the greatest contributor to our Thomas family. All these years, I've been filled with guilt, feeling that I've wronged you. Please accept these 30% shares as the Thomas family's apology to you." Though he didn't fully understand what had happened, Dad knew this was the Thomas family bowing their heads to him. A faint smile curled at the corners of his lips as he coldly said, "I don't want any shares of your Thomas family." Simon Thomas's eyes darted around before landing on me, who was happily devouring little cakes. "Then give them to Happy. You can't possibly object to that," Dad said coldly. "Do you think this little bit of shares can buy Happy? Whatever you can give me, I can give too." In the blink of an eye, I suddenly had an additional 60% of the shares on my head. I was stunned, pointing at the tip of my nose with my index finger, my face full of question marks. Me, the major shareholder of the Thomas family. After the dinner party, I truly became the largest shareholder of the Thomas family, with my father's lifelong obsession resolved. His relationship with Simon Thomas gradually improved, showing a somewhat harmonious brotherly bond. One day, Simon Thomas tentatively approached his father and asked, "Happy is already this old, and it's not right for him to keep drifting around outside. Why not come back and acknowledge his roots?" At these words, his father's expression changed dramatically. He looked as furious as if the cabbages in his field were about to be stolen by the neighbor. Utterly enraged, "Simon Thomas, are you never going to stop? I can let everything else slide, but not my daughter." Dad threw Simon Thomas out, chair and all, but Simon Thomas didn't give up. He kept coming by every few days to plead his case, with such sincerity and humility that even Dad, the big villain, couldn't bring himself to be harsh with him. At his wits' end, Dad decided to pack up and leave overnight without telling me. I leaned against Dad's back and asked curiously, "Dad, Uncle is here again. Where should we hide this time?" Dad said gently, "I bought an unnamed little island in the Pacific. The scenery is pleasant and the climate is warm there. I promise you'll love it." Great. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. I've transmigrated into the role of the wicked stepmother who abused the male lead son in the book. This pitiful little thing before me is the same child who will grow up to be cold-hearted and send his stepmother to a mental institution. I'm going to raise this future villain into a mama's boy. Let's see how he can still turn evil then. Standing in front of me is a skinny little boy, about 6 years old, with big black eyes like grapes, looking at me in disbelief. $100 a month isn't enough. The child pursed his lips, his fingers clutching the $100 bill turning slightly white. I transmigrated into a melodramatic novel, becoming the wicked stepmother who abused the male lead son. This pitiful little boy before me is Jasper Lincoln, who grows up to be cold and ruthless, sending his stepmother to a mental institution. Thinking about the original owner's fate in the book, I shuddered. Fortunately, the time I transmigrated into was still early, and the original owner had only just started by skimping on the allowance, $100 a month. What kind of person does that? Forget that the Lincoln family is wealthy, even ordinary families wouldn't do something like this. I forced out a kind smile. "I'm sorry, Jasper. I read a book about raising sons frugally yesterday and got the wrong idea." I directly handed him a bank card. "You're still young, so there's 100,000 in the card. Don't spend it recklessly." "Oh, and the injury on your arm." I reached out to check, but Jasper Lincoln immediately took 2 steps back. "I fell by myself," he said quickly. I sighed. The original owner had been emotionally abusive to the child. No wonder he was so guarded. It seems it'll take some effort to change that impression. "All right, but be more careful next time." I maintained my smile. "What would you like for dinner?" "I'll cook for you." Jasper Lincoln's expression was filled with confusion. And after a long pause, he managed to squeeze out 2 words, "Whatever. How about sweet and sour pork ribs, steamed sea bass, and stir-fried broccoli with shrimp? I remember you like these dishes." I recalled the descriptions in the book about the male lead son's preferences. Sure enough, the little one's eyes lit up briefly, but he quickly regained his guarded expression. He nodded, turned around, and hurriedly left the house. I let out a long sigh and sat down on the sofa. In the book, John Lincoln married the original host simply because she bore some resemblance to his deceased White Moonlight. He was also indifferent to his son, which gave the wicked stepmother the opportunity to cause trouble. I don't want to follow in the original host's footsteps. As I was thinking, the door opened. A tall, well-dressed man in a suit stood at the door, his sharply defined face devoid of any expression. "John Lincoln." The man frowned slightly. "What did you call me?" The original owner always called him Brother John, in a sickeningly sweet manner. I couldn't bring myself to say it, afraid I'd disgust myself to death. I changed my words. Husband, why are you back? John Lincoln's gaze turned even colder. Don't call me that. I'm just here to get some documents. He walked straight to the study without even giving me another glance. No wonder he's the cold and ruthless male lead. I pouted, suddenly remembering something. By the way, about Jasper's injury. Don't bother me with such trivial matters. John Lincoln interrupted me without even turning his head. As long as it doesn't affect the Lincoln family's reputation, I don't care how you get along, but remember, don't cause me any trouble. With that, he turned and walked away with the documents, as if this house were some kind of den of danger. I stared at the closed door, utterly speechless. Wow, this father really knows how to take it easy. No wonder Jasper Lincoln turned out so twisted. This family environment is downright suffocating. I clenched my fists. I'll raise the future villain to be a mama's boy and see how he can still turn evil. In the afternoon, I hummed a tune while preparing dinner. The aroma of sweet and sour spare ribs filled the air. A small figure appeared at the kitchen door, hungry. Just 10 more minutes until dinner. There was no response from behind, but I heard a tiny gulp. Here, try a piece first. I picked up a piece, blew on it to cool it down, and handed it to him. Jasper Lincoln hesitated for a moment but ultimately couldn't resist the temptation. He carefully took it and took a small bite. Then, his big eyes instantly lit up, as if stars had fallen into a deep pool. Is it delicious? I asked with a smile. Jasper Lincoln nodded, then quickly returned to his expressionless state. I couldn't help but chuckle and reached out to wipe the sauce from the corner of his mouth, but he reflexively flinched backward. I softened my voice. Don't be afraid, I won't hit you, I promise. Jasper Lincoln stared at me blankly, as if assessing the truth of my words. Eventually, he gradually relaxed his body. My classmates say stepmothers always hit their children, he whispered. I said sternly, hitting people is wrong. This answer clearly took Jasper Lincoln by surprise. He tilted his head and looked at me with a curious expression. Go wash your hands, dinner is almost ready. I patted his shoulder, and this time he didn't pull away. During the meal, Jasper Lincoln ate cautiously but went for seconds twice. Tomorrow's Saturday, want to go to the amusement park? I casually asked. His spoon fell into the bowl. What's wrong? I asked in confusion. Daddy said, amusement parks are boring places that waste time. He whispered. I rolled my eyes. Your dad's out of his mind. So, are we going or not? Jasper Lincoln's eyes lit up, and he gave an almost imperceptible nod. I slammed the table. Then it settled. Sleep in tomorrow, and then we're off. The little guy tried hard to suppress it but still couldn't hide his expectant expression. On Saturday morning, I opened my door with messy bed hair and nearly stepped on Jasper Lincoln, who was squatting at the entrance. Whoa, what are you doing here? I jumped back in fright. Jasper Lincoln was already dressed neatly, holding a small backpack in his arms, his eyes sparkling. It's 7 o'clock, he said. The amusement park doesn't open until 9. Kid, good morning. I'm not sure how long he's been squatting here. This kid is way too impatient, isn't he? Jasper Lincoln pursed his lips without speaking, but his eyes clearly showed eagerness. Give me half an hour. After finishing my morning routine, I casually grabbed a t-shirt and jeans to put on. When I came out, Jasper Lincoln was still standing in the same spot, his posture unchanged. Let's go, we'll grab breakfast first. I ruffled his hair. Jasper Lincoln instinctively flinched but didn't pull away. At the breakfast shop near the neighborhood entrance, Jasper Lincoln stared at the soy milk and fried dough sticks in front of him, hesitating to pick up his chopsticks. What's wrong? Don't like it? I asked. He shook his head and whispered. Dad never lets me eat outside, says it's unhygienic. I rolled my eyes. The male lead's ridiculous rules were endless. It's fine to have it once in a while. I took a big bite of the fried dough stick. Crispy and delicious. Try it quickly. Jasper Lincoln also took a bite, and his eyes immediately squinted. This child is so easy to raise. I couldn't help but laugh. We arrived early, so the amusement park wasn't crowded. Jasper Lincoln stayed close to me, his little face tense. His eyes kept darting around, curious about everything. Have you never been here before? I asked. Jasper Lincoln shook his head. Dad said it's a waste of time. Fits perfectly with John Lincoln's workaholic persona. I bought the tickets and grabbed a map while I was at it. Let's try every ride today, I declared boldly. Jasper Lincoln's eyes lit up instantly, but soon dimmed again. Won't you get too tired? He asked cautiously. My heart ached. In the book, Jenny often used tiredness as an excuse to cancel plans she'd made with him. I crouched down to meet his eye level. Listen, if I complain about being tired even once today, you can throw me in there. I pointed at the distant giant swing ride. Jasper Lincoln followed my finger and smirked slightly. Really, deal? I extended my little finger. He hesitated for a moment, then hooked his finger with mine and gave it a gentle shake. The first attraction was the carousel. Jasper Lincoln chose a white horse with a stern expression, sitting upright as if participating in some solemn ceremony. I sat in the pumpkin carriage nearby and took several photos. Next, he jumped off the wooden horse, his cheeks slightly flushed, clearly getting excited. Pirate ship, drop tower, bumper cars. Jasper Lincoln gradually loosened up and took the initiative to hold my hand in the haunted house. He had already learned to point at the map and plan the route for our visit. This is very high. Jasper Lincoln looked up at the roller coaster whizzing by, his voice trembling slightly. Scared? I raised an eyebrow. Not at all. He immediately puffed out his chest. I suppressed a laugh. Maybe we should just forget it. I want to sit in the front row. He interrupted me, his eyes stubborn. When the roller coaster reached its peak, the little one who claimed to be fearless tightly gripped my hand, closed his eyes, and shouted, "Mom, save me." I froze. It was the first time he called me Mom, though out of fear. I held his hand in return. Hold on tight. We're about to plunge down. Our screams blended together. By the time the car came to a stop, Jasper Lincoln's hair was standing on end, his cheeks were flushed, and he was laughing happily. Again, I asked. Yes, he nodded vigorously. At lunch in the park's restaurant, Jasper Lincoln excitedly shared with me how much he loved riding roller coasters, watching him gesture animatedly. I couldn't connect this image with the guarded, gloomy child from yesterday. Your ice cream is melting. I pointed at the cone in his hand. He quickly licked it, and the cream stuck to the tip of his nose. I reached out to wipe it off for him, and this time he didn't dodge at all. There's a game booth over there. Want to give it a try? I pointed to a row of colorful tents not far away. Jasper Lincoln's eyes lit up, but he hesitated immediately. I heard those are all scams. It's really hard to win. That's exactly why we should try. I pulled him over. We tried a few shooting games, but the results were dismal. Just as I was about to admit defeat, Jasper Lincoln stopped in front of a calculation-based game. The task was to quickly estimate the number of candies in a jar. Want to give it a try? I asked. He nodded, after paying the game tokens. The stall owner pointed to the colorful candies neatly arranged on the table, giving only 5 seconds to observe. Please write down your answer. Jasper Lincoln barely hesitated before writing down a number. After checking, the stall owner's eyes widened in astonishment. 367, absolutely correct. You're the first kid to guess right in all this time. I stared in astonishment as Jasper Lincoln walked away with the largest teddy bear, which was almost taller than him. How did you do that? I whispered. Jasper Lincoln shrugged, counted one side and multiplied. Simple. In the book, Jasper Lincoln grew up to be a financial genius. It seems this talent was innate. Want to try making money with game coins? I said excitedly. Can I? He tilted his head, looking at me. Of course. I'll give you 100 coins as capital. Let's see how much you can earn. What happened next truly opened my eyes. Jasper Lincoln wandered among various game stalls, specifically targeting probability-based games. He exchanged his initial funds for game tokens and, after a few rounds of coin pushing, had already doubled his principal. Then he switched to number guessing and won quite a bit more. Here, this is for you. 2 hours later, he tugged at my sleeve and handed me a stack of game tickets. I counted them, exactly 1,000 yuan's worth. Did you cheat? I teased. His face instantly turned red. No way, those games all have patterns you can figure out. I was just kidding. I quickly reassured him. Jasper, you're amazing. Keep the game tickets for yourself. We'll come play again next time. A slight smile curled at the corners of Jasper Lincoln's lips, his eyes sparkling. Okay, next time, let's come together again. Oh my God. How could such a cute child turn into a cold-blooded villain in the book? I hugged him tightly and stroked his head. Come on, I'll reward you with a super big marshmallow. His body stiffened for a moment, but he didn't pull away. Jasper Lincoln held a marshmallow as big as his head, licking it little by little, his mouth covered in sugar threads. I secretly captured this adorable moment. In the evening, we walked toward the exit carrying bags full of prizes. Jasper Lincoln kept glancing up at me every few steps, hesitating to speak. What's wrong? I asked. Thank you, for today. His voice was very soft. Today was the happiest day of my life. My heart felt like it was gently squeezed by a tiny hand. I ruffled his hair. There will be many more days like this in the future, I promise. Jasper Lincoln nodded and took my hand on his own. When we got home, as soon as we entered, we saw that we had guests. Well, if it isn't Jenny. A woman in a light blue dress sits on the sofa. John Lincoln steps out in a crisp suit, clearly dressed for a formal occasion. Brother John said Jasper went out with you today. I could hardly believe it. The woman wears a smile, but her eyes are cold. After all, I heard you used to. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't bring up those unpleasant things. This is Sarah, John Lincoln's childhood friend. She's been abroad for many years and only recently returned. John Lincoln stood expressionlessly to the side, showing no intention of introducing her. I smiled slightly. Yes, Jasper and I had a great time, right, son? Jasper Lincoln looked at me, then at Sarah, and stepped in front of me. Although this protective stance looked a bit comical given our height difference, Jasper has grown so much. Sarah bent down to pat his head, but he dodged her touch. She straightened up awkwardly. Brother John, aren't we supposed to attend Chairman Owen's dinner party? John Lincoln nodded and looked at Jasper Lincoln. Remember to finish your homework. Is that all? Aren't you going to ask how our son enjoyed himself today? I pouted. Jasper did great at the amusement park today and even won a lot of prizes. John Lincoln glanced at the teddy bear in Jasper Lincoln's arms and frowned slightly. Don't let toys distract you from your ambitions. With that, he turned to leave. Dad, Jasper Lincoln suddenly spoke. Mom took me on a roller coaster today. The really high and fast kind. Do you want to try it too? John Lincoln froze, seemingly unaccustomed to his son initiating a conversation. Sarah chuckled softly. Brother John hates these childish games the most, right? Jasper Lincoln's shoulders slumped. I said with a smile, some people pretend to be mature on the surface, but deep down, there's a playful little kid inside, right, Jasper? Jasper Lincoln chuckled secretly and nodded. John Lincoln looked at me, then at his son, and finally said, be careful, turned and walked away. Sarah gave me a meaningful look. Jenny, your profile looks so much like John's first love, but your full face, I pretended not to catch her sarcasm. Jasper also says I look like his favorite mom. Sarah's expression changed, and she hurriedly chased after John Lincoln. Who is she? Jasper Lincoln asked. I shrugged. Someone who wants to be your stepmother. Jasper Lincoln looked surprised. I don't want a second stepmother. I smiled and said, how about I make fried chicken for you tonight? Jasper Lincoln suddenly said seriously, you're not like anyone else. I was stunned. You're much prettier than that auntie. He lowered his head to play with his fingers, his ears turning red. My heart melted into a puddle. The child is not only smart but also so considerate. I said earnestly, Jasper, from today onwards, we'll be the best partners, okay? He looked up at me with sparkling eyes and nodded solemnly. I flipped through the calendar on my phone, suddenly remembered that next Wednesday is Jasper Lincoln's birthday. The book mentioned that since his biological mother passed away, Jasper Lincoln has never celebrated his birthday. The original owner even canceled birthday celebrations, using the excuse that he wasn't biologically related and there was no need to celebrate. Thinking of that little guy who was overjoyed by a cotton candy at the amusement park, my heart ached with sorrow. I've got to make a big move. I slammed the table, startling Jasper Lincoln, who was doing his homework, nearly jumping out of his seat. What's wrong? He looked up from his workbook, his little face full of confusion. Nothing. I changed the subject. Want some pudding? His eyes lit up, but he immediately became wary. Are you trying to get me to taste test another new recipe? Last week, I attempted to make matcha cake, and it turned him into a little green man. This time it's store-bought, not homemade. I confidently pulled out the pudding I bought from the supermarket. Only then did Jasper Lincoln take the spoon with relief. Watching him savor the dessert in small bites, my mind was already planning the details of the birthday party. After dropping Jasper Lincoln off at school the next day, I walked into John Lincoln's study. This nominal husband of mine was unusually at home today. What's the matter? He looked up from the pile of documents, his gaze cold and distant behind the gold-rimmed glasses. Jasper's birthday is next Wednesday. I want to throw him a party. I got straight to the point. John Lincoln frowned. He never celebrates birthdays. I couldn't help rolling my eyes. I'm starting to doubt he's even your biological child. All kids love birthday parties. Whatever. John Lincoln lowered his head again. Don't disturb my work. Will you come? I asked. John Lincoln paused his pen tip. It depends. I pouted and turned to leave. I recall the plot and realize Jasper Lincoln has a passion for astronomy. Thus, the theme for the birthday party was decided, a starry night party. In the following days, I secretly made preparations while Jasper Lincoln was at school, ordered a starry sky projector lamp, planet-shaped balloons, a NASA co-branded stationery set, and specifically found a dessert shop that could make a 3D planet cake. The night before the birthday, after Jasper Lincoln fell asleep, I tiptoed around to decorate the living room. As I stood on the ladder hanging the "Happy Birthday" starlights, a voice suddenly came from behind. "Need some help?" I nearly fell off the ladder in fright. A strong arm promptly steadied my waist. Turning around, I met the handsome face of John Lincoln, who had just returned from overtime work, still shaken. I patted my chest and said, "Do you always walk without making a sound?" He let go. "What are you doing? Can't you tell? Setting up the birthday party." I continued hanging the streamers. "If you're free, help blow up the balloons." John Lincoln actually rolled up his sleeves and started blowing up balloons. Watching the impeccably dressed business elite puffing his cheeks to inflate a balloon, I couldn't help but laugh. "What's so funny?" He frowned. "Nothing. Pfft, nothing." I quickly changed the subject. "Do you know if Jasper has any close friends? I've invited his classmates, but I'm not sure who he likes to play with." John Lincoln's expression stiffened. "No idea. An irresponsible father is even more terrifying than a wicked stepmother." I sighed. "By the way, are you coming tomorrow?" John Lincoln said indifferently. "I have a meeting." My tone turned cold. "Then at least prepare a gift, won't you?" John Lincoln nodded thoughtfully and suddenly asked, "Why are you suddenly being so nice to him?" My heart skipped a beat. "I can't very well say. I know your son will become a villainous big shot in the future, so it's more cost-effective to cozy up to him now. Can I? He's a good kid and deserves to be treated well." John Lincoln gave me a deep look but said nothing more. Early the next morning, I pushed open the door to Jasper Lincoln's room. "Happy birthday." I loudly sang the birthday song. Jasper Lincoln crawled out from under the covers, his hair tousled and looking utterly confused. "Today is my birthday." "That's right. Today is your 7th birthday." Jasper Lincoln stared at me blankly, his eyes suddenly turning red. "I was busy taking photos." "Smile," Jasper Lincoln whispered. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is just the beginning." I smiled mysteriously. "Get dressed and come downstairs. There's a surprise." Jasper Lincoln stood in the center of the newly decorated living room, his little mouth forming an O shape. A starry sky projector cast the Milky Way onto the ceiling, planet balloons floated everywhere, and a 3-tiered planet cake sat on the dining table. "Do you like it?" I asked eagerly. He nodded, his eyes shining as if filled with stars. Just then, the doorbell rang, and his classmates arrived one after another, each holding a gift. Jasper Lincoln stood awkwardly beside me, clearly unaccustomed to being the center of attention. "Go play with your friends." I gave him a gentle push. Watching him play a space-themed board game with his classmates, grinning from ear to ear, I smiled with deep satisfaction. Halfway through the party, the children were helping to unwrap the presents. I brought out the asteroid cookies I had made myself. Suddenly, the living room fell silent, and all the children looked behind me. John Lincoln actually came back, holding a box in his hand. "Dad," Jasper Lincoln's voice trembled slightly. John Lincoln handed him the box. "Happy birthday." Jasper Lincoln carefully unwrapped the packaging. It was a professional-grade astronomical telescope. "Thank you, Dad." He jumped up excitedly. John Lincoln nodded and retreated to the corner. He stood like a bystander, quietly watching his son play with friends. After the party ended and all the guests had left, Jasper Lincoln still clung to that telescope, unwilling to let go. "It's time to prepare dinner." I clapped my hands. "Today the birthday person gets to decide. What would you like to eat?" "Can we have hot pot?" he asked eagerly. "Of course." I glanced at John Lincoln. "How about you? Want to eat together?" He nodded. I stood up. "But someone needs to help me prepare the ingredients. Jasper, come to the kitchen and help." Jasper Lincoln obediently followed. John Lincoln hesitated for a moment, then took off his suit jacket and followed inside. "First, wash the vegetables." I handed Jasper Lincoln a basket of greens. "You're in charge of this." "What about me?" John Lincoln asked. I raised an eyebrow. "Can you cook?" "No." "Then, how about plating?" The house was well stocked with ingredients, and the butler replenished the fridge with fresh supplies every day. I swallowed hard as I looked at the Wagyu beef that had just been air-shipped this morning. Being rich is really nice. If it weren't for bonding with Jasper Lincoln, I wouldn't be cooking myself. The chef at home is Michelin 3-star standard. I've decided. In a few days I'll start enjoying myself, after dinner. I helped Jasper Lincoln organize the gifts. He suddenly asked, "Why are you so nice to me?" I paused what I was doing. "Because you're a very special child, and you deserve to be cherished." Jasper Lincoln lowered his head, playing with his fingers. "But, I'm not your biological child, so what?" I ruffled his hair. "Love isn't about blood ties, it's about what's in here." I tapped his chest lightly. Jasper Lincoln fell silent for a moment before suddenly throwing himself into my arms. Burying his little face in my shoulder. "Thank you, Mom." I hugged him back tightly. "You're welcome, my darling." A faint sound came from the doorway. I looked up to see John Lincoln quickly turning and walking away. That day, I was swimming in the mansion. The homeroom teacher suddenly called, saying Jasper Lincoln had gotten into a fight at school and needed a parent to come over. When I arrived at the school, I saw Jasper Lincoln standing there with his head down, his eyes red. "Did you get into a fight?" Jasper Lincoln lowered his head without speaking. I noticed his knuckles were slightly swollen and red, with a scratch mark on his face. Seems like the fight was pretty intense. A chubby little boy was crying and complaining, while his mother stood beside him, looking furious. "What's going on?" I asked the homeroom teacher. "Jasper Lincoln hit Devin," the homeroom teacher said helplessly. "Although Devin can be a bit mischievous at times, fighting is never right." "A bit mischievous," I sneered. Did he say something again about Jasper not having a mom? This was the plot written in the book. Jasper Lincoln was often bullied. The homeroom teacher looked surprised. "How did you know?" I crouched down and asked Jasper Lincoln. "Is that true?" He nodded and whispered. "He said you aren't my real mom, that I'm just an unwanted stray child." I told him to stop, but he kept saying it, so I hit him. I stood up and said to the parent, "Your son has verbally bullied my child more than once. Today, I believe Jasper did the right thing." "What?" the mother screamed. "Does your son have the right to hit others?" "It was just self-defense," I said coldly. Turning to the homeroom teacher, "If any student maliciously slanders Jasper again in the future, I will directly file a complaint with the Education Bureau for the school's inaction." "Understood." The homeroom teacher was stunned by my imposing manner and nodded repeatedly. "Let's go, son." I took Jasper Lincoln's hand. "Wait." That mother wouldn't let it go. "Just let it go. Your son beat up my son." I turned around and looked at him coldly. "If you have any complaints, go talk to John Lincoln. I believe you know who he is." The mother immediately fell silent as if someone had grabbed her by the throat. "Although John Lincoln is incompetent, his name sure comes in handy." All the way, Jasper Lincoln held my hand tightly. As we walked out of the school gate, he suddenly said, "You were so cool just now." I smiled and pinched his cheek, saying, "Remember, if anyone bullies you in the future, warn them first. If that doesn't work, just hit them. If anything happens, Mom will back you up." Ahem, borrowing John Lincoln's name, Jasper Lincoln nodded vigorously, his eyes filled with admiration. When we got home, John Lincoln was unusually waiting for us in the living room. The school called me. "What happened?" Just as I was about to explain, Jasper Lincoln spoke up first. "I got into a fight, but I don't regret it." John Lincoln raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Devin said I don't have a mom," Jasper Lincoln said with red eyes. "But I do. Jenny is my mom." John Lincoln's expression grew complicated, his gaze shifting between me and our son. "Finally," he said, "don't get into fights again. It creates a bad impression." Jasper Lincoln lowered his head in disappointment. "Understood." I took Jasper Lincoln's hand and said, "Don't listen to him. But next time, avoid hitting the face. It leaves evidence too easily." Jasper Lincoln froze for a moment, then pursed his lips and smiled. The next morning, I noticed an extra card on the nightstand. Written in Jasper Lincoln's neat handwriting were the words, "To the best mom in the world." Below it was a simple sketch of the two of us, without his father, John Lincoln, holding the card. I laughed with my hands on my hips. The mama's boy training plan seems to have succeeded. A white Porsche stopped in front of the villa. Sarah walked out gracefully in her high heels. "Mom, what are you looking at?" Jasper Lincoln's voice sounded from behind. "Ah," I jumped in fright. "You scared me. Why are you walking so quietly?" Several years had passed, and Jasper Lincoln had already grown taller than me. The young boy stood tall and straight, with a rare composure in his eyes for someone his age. "She's here again." Seeing Sarah, Jasper Lincoln curled his lip. "Here, these are the photos she sent today." I opened my phone gallery and showed him the intimate photos of Sarah and John Lincoln, all taken from misleading angles. "How amusing. Does she really think I care?" "She really doesn't know when to stop." Jasper Lincoln said coldly. Appear 3 times a week, staying for 2 hours each time. I couldn't help but laugh. Why are you even keeping track? Never mind her, go wash your hands and eat. John Lincoln and Sarah walked in together. Sarah glanced at me with a hint of disdain in her eyes. Brother John loves the French cuisine I make the most. Shall I teach you a few simple dishes next time? No need. We have a chef at home, I said with a smile. Besides, our Jasper only likes Chinese food. Go enjoy your foie gras with your brother John until you both get fatty liver. Jasper Lincoln nodded. My mom's cooking is the best. Who wants to eat bland white people food? Sarah's face stiffened. Over the years, Jasper Lincoln had always managed to hit Sarah's sore spot with pinpoint accuracy. She turned to John Lincoln. Brother John, shall I accompany you to the negotiation with Washington tomorrow? No need, Jasper will go with me. John Lincoln took off his suit jacket and hung it on the hallway coat rack. Jasper Lincoln raised an eyebrow. Me, your last analysis report was quite good. I looked up in surprise. John Lincoln actually praising his son. Has the sun risen from the west? Sarah was displeased. Jasper is still a middle school student. That kind of occasion isn't suitable for him, is it? He's already handled 3 projects for me. Tisk. This man is really pragmatic. Only started valuing his son when he found him useful. Sarah stormed off in anger. The 3 of us sat down to eat. After a moment, John Lincoln suddenly spoke up. Jenny, there's a charity banquet next week. You'll accompany me. I paused mid-bite. Why? John Lincoln frowned. You are Mrs. Lincoln, aren't you? Jasper Lincoln and I exchanged a glance. Over the past few years, John Lincoln's attitude toward me had softened, but this was the first time he suddenly wanted to take me to a public event. I raised an eyebrow. I can accompany you, but it'll cost extra. John Lincoln had already grown accustomed to my behavior patterns. He nodded and got up to go upstairs. Jasper Lincoln immediately leaned in. What's he scheming? I shrugged. Who knows? Maybe he's just tired of Sarah's nagging. Jasper Lincoln narrowed his eyes. Mom, I'll protect you. My heart warmed. That once frail little boy was now a head taller than me, a young man. On the night of the charity gala, I wore a purple evening gown. Jasper Lincoln exclaimed in admiration upon seeing it. Wow, Mom is so beautiful. John Lincoln came downstairs and showed a hint of amazement when he saw me. Then he quickly returned to his expressionless state. Let's go. At the banquet, John Lincoln, contrary to his usual behavior, stayed by my side the entire time and actively introduced me to others as his wife. Sarah stood at a distance, her gaze burning a hole through me. What kind of game are you playing? When no one was around, I whispered to John Lincoln. He looked at me. I just suddenly realized, you're more important than I thought. I sneered. Mr. Lou, you'd better save those words for Miss Lynn. After returning home, John Lincoln stopped me. We need to talk. He took me to the study and handed me a document. I opened it and saw it was a stock transfer agreement. He transferred 5% of Lou Corporation's shares to me. What does this mean? I asked warily. I want to start over, he said. Looking at me, all these years, I've seen how you treat Jasper. You're a good mother. I put down the documents. John Lincoln, what exactly are you trying to say? I think we might be able to develop a real marital relationship. He said this with some nervousness. I scoffed. These were the words the original host had dreamed of hearing, but now they sounded so ironic. I'll take the shares. They're what I deserve. But keep the feelings. John Lincoln's expression changed. Why? Because I don't love you. I stood up and left. John Lincoln, you never understood me. I'm just a substitute. Remember, he wanted to say something, but I turned and left the study. The next day, Jasper Lincoln mysteriously pulled me into his room and locked the door. I've discovered something. He turned on the computer and pulled up a series of emails and documents. Sarah is secretly in contact with people from HS. This is a plot point from the original story. Sarah colluded with the business rivals of the Lincoln family to manipulate things, causing an important project of the Lou family to fail. She took the opportunity to force John Lincoln to divorce me and marry her instead. How did you get these? I asked in surprise. Jasper Lincoln smiled smugly. I have my ways. What matters is that they plan to make trouble at next week's board meeting. I pondered for a moment. Why didn't you tell your dad about this? Jasper Lincoln sneered. I suspect he's known all along. Obvious what? Take a look at this. He pulled up an encrypted file. My father has been secretly transferring assets recently. I think he's preparing an escape route. In the book, John Lincoln did indeed detect the conspiracy in advance but chose to play along. sacrificing Jenny for commercial gain. Unexpectedly, the plot advanced by a year. What are you planning to do? I asked. Jasper Lincoln flashed a shrewd smile that belied his age. Play along. For the next week, Jasper Lincoln became unusually busy. John Lincoln was also often away from home, and when he did return, he had a furrowed brow. Sarah, on the other hand, came around even more frequently. Each time looking at me with the eyes of a victor. I'll just secretly enjoy the drama. The night before the board meeting, Jasper Lincoln couldn't hide his excitement. Ready? I asked. He nodded. Tomorrow is the crucial day. No matter what happens, Mom, remember I'll always be on your side. I vaguely sensed there was more to his words, but the exhausted man had already yawned and returned to his room. The next day, Jasper Lincoln sent me a message. Mom, watch the live stream. I quickly logged into my social media account. The annual board meeting of the Lou Corporation was in session. Presiding over the meeting was not John Lincoln, but Jasper Lincoln. Thank you all for taking the time to attend despite your busy schedules. Jasper Lincoln stood at the podium like a little adult, his voice steady and composed. I have an important announcement to make. The camera pans to John Lincoln, whose face is ashen. As a major shareholder of the company, I request security to restrain Ms. Sarah. She is suspected of corporate espionage and fraud. Jasper Lincoln's words sent the entire room into an uproar. Sarah screamed as she was pinned down by security. Jasper Lincoln then played a recording. It was Sarah conspiring with a competitor on how to bring down the Lou Corporation. John Lincoln's expression shifted from shock to relief. When did you acquire so many shares? He asked in a low voice. Jasper Lincoln smiled. I used the allowance my mom gave me as seed money. Jasper Lincoln continued to address everyone. All evidence has been handed over to the police. Additionally, I announced that Lou Corporation will form a strategic partnership with JT Dessert Chain, my dessert shop. I was stunned. I haven't been idle these years, opening chain stores that are doing quite well. John Lincoln didn't know anything. Only Jasper Lincoln was told. In the evening, Jasper Lincoln returned home, followed by a visibly conflicted John Lincoln. Care to explain, dear son? I asked, hands on my hips. Jasper Lincoln grinned, reverting back to that coquettish young boy. Happy birthday, Mom, this is my gift for you, he said softly. My nose tingled with emotion. You little rascal, how could you not tell me about such a big thing in advance? I wanted to surprise you. Jasper Lincoln hugged me. John Lincoln stood to the side, looking despondent. As he was about to go upstairs, I spoke up. John Lincoln, let's get a divorce. Mom, you're finally leaving Dad. That's great. John Lincoln hadn't even processed what was happening when Jasper Lincoln jumped up with joy. He looked at the man who had ignored him all these years. Dad, you don't deserve to be a husband or father. I've decided to stay with Mom. John Lincoln froze completely. He couldn't understand why both his wife and son had abandoned him. After a long silence, he closed his eyes briefly, then looked at me. I understand. I'll set you free. A month later, the divorce was finalized. I moved into the spacious apartment I had purchased earlier. With the help of my dear son, my dessert shop expanded nationwide and then went international. Mom, try this. It's a newly developed recipe. Jasper Lincoln handed me a piece of cake. I took a bite and squinted with happiness. Delicious. Didn't you have a merger meeting today? How did you find time to bake a cake? No matter how busy I am, I'll always make desserts for Mom. Jasper Lincoln is 20 years old. Already a formidable business tycoon feared in the corporate world at such a young age, but as soon as we get home, he still loves to cling to me and act spoiled. I never expected that I'd actually raise this kid to be such a mama's boy. He suddenly remembered something. By the way, Uncle Henderson invited you to dinner tomorrow. I looked up in surprise. How did you know? Jasper Lincoln analyzed seriously. His company's financial situation is sound. His romantic history is clean, and he's in good health. Stop. I grabbed a pillow and threw it at him. You investigated my date. Jasper Lincoln dodged nimbly. Of course, anyone who wants to pursue my mom has to pass my test first. Brat, don't you worry about your mom's love life. I chased him around the house, laughter filling every corner. That's all the story. What do you think of this story? Share with me in the comments section. What would you do if you were in this situation? Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.